Okay, it seems everything is fine. Everything is fine now. This went well last night, so hopefully today it goes well too. Last night I got to Silent Hill, Silent Hill, yeah, I got to Silent Hill. Hmm, getting some stuff ready. And it seems like we're set. Okay, so yesterday I did Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2, but also because I don't want it to get boring by the ending stretch, I also intercutting some of the lesser known entries in the middle between major entries. That way, when we get to the end of this, it won't be as boring just listening to just listening about a characters that you don't know about. Um, yeah, I think we can start now. So last night for the plan for today was that I would start with the Silent Hill 2 remake, which is just not many characters, then do a random lesser known entry, and then do Silent Hill 3. And that may still work, but I'm not sure if I want to do Silent Hill 2 remake this early. I think I'm gonna leave it for a bit later, and instead I'm going to be moving on to Silent Hill 3. I think that is a good move. Let's see. First of all, you have no. Do you know what? No, no, no. It's my stream. I do what I want. I'm going to do Silent Hill 2 remake right away. I think that I think I think I'm going to get very messy if I just start skipping outside of the minor entries. So I'm just going to focus on going in order. And hopefully that makes a lot more sense than whatever I had in my mind a few minutes ago. Alright, remake James Sunderland. This man, I think the remake did a great job at exploring some facets of James that weren't seen in the original. Some of them were already there, but they weren't very clear, like his alcoholism. He's more sympathetic in some areas than in others, but overall, I don't really care about how sympathetic a character is for this ranking, and he's as complex, as interesting as ever. So I think it's only fair that he stays in S tier. I don't know if I'm going to rearrange the each tier at the end, but right now, Remake James, he's fine. He's still James. I can't say he's any better or worse yet, but I think I think he's still S tier material. Next up is Remake Mary. I actually don't know if I could put her in S tier. I mean, right now, nothing much about her is coming to my memory. Nothing that is new, of course. Uh, Even then, if I can't remember anything new about her in the remake, the core character is still S tier. I don't know if I should bring her down a tier just because I don't remember much of her in the remake. I think at her core, Mary, it's still Mary, even if it's the core, what is needed for her to be S tier, is still there. So I think she's staying in it. I think that's only fair for her. Next up is Maria. Before the remake came out, I was very curious about what they would do with her because my view of Maria is that she is kind of pathetic in a sympathetic way, and I didn't want her to be too much of a temptation goddess, if that makes any sense. And Bloober didn't let me down on that. It, as of now, I think she's still missing Born from a Wish. So I think that part of her character is still not explored as much. So I think she can't be S tier yet, but she's still a very high A tier because of all the new interactions that were added to the remake. So even though I don't think she can be S tier yet, I think she deserves at least a very, very high A tier. And maybe if Born from a Wish does come out eventually, I still have a little bit of hope. Then maybe she can get to S tier. Oh, hello. Yeah, I put him in S tier. Remake Laura. Hmm. I do like the nuances on her performance in the remake. And I like those nuances slightly more than in the original. She was already my lowest rated main character from 2, but I think she still doesn't interest me as much as the other characters. I think she's okay in an A tier. I don't know where exactly in A tier, but I think the performance and those small nuances in her characterization really brought the character up by a lot. Hmm, Eddie Dombrowski. I have his original counterpart in S tier. How do I feel about him in the remake? I think they did get uh, his more sympathetic side. I really like how he initially really genuinely wants to team up with James, and you can tell that it hurts him that James declines. I think his descent into madness is paced better than in the original. I do think remake Eddie was definitely enhanced. His madness in the remake is more of a cold loss of emotion compared to the original's aggressiveness. And I really like that portrayal of him. So I'm going to put him next to the original Eddie and slightly up. I think Blubber really nailed how to do Eddie Dombrowski without making him a caricature, like I feel most of the fandom does. Uh, uh, uh. Remake Angela Orozco. She got new scenes, a lot more focus into Labyrinth. Mm, yeah, the scene in the Moonlight Grove is pretty good, quite memorable. Her performance is still very good. I don't think I can decide on whether I prefer the original Angela or the new one. I think they are on about equal terms. I don't think I could pick between one or the other, which is interesting because their performances aren't exactly alike. Uh, some bits are definitely different, but still, I think they come together very similarly as a whole. Moving on to minor characters of the remake. The janitor, um, side character that you read about in some notes. Um, he is supposed to be a parallel of James, metaphorically, of course. Um, yeah, that regret, that loneliness that comes with grief. We might. Hmm. I wonder. There's still that mystery of the door that James can't bring himself to open in the apartments. It's kind of tied to the janitor subplot. Even if it turns out to not be anything tangible, I still think that at least puts him on par with Joseph Barkin, I feel. To look at Prison Warden. So apparently this one was kind of vague. Um, but when I wrote this entry for the tier list, the local prison warden was meant to be the ones that were. Oh my god, I'm throwing a blank right now. There's some notes that you get about some kind of disease spreading among the prisoners, and the warden at the time seems very obsessed. Uh, That's that's pretty much what I'm trying to rank here. I mean, I feel like he's a lesser Brookhaven director. I'm gonna put him in C tier. I don't think he's as interesting, but I still found those notes and those elements good enough. That they were interesting, just not as much as the the other subplots that you see around. So I'm glad that they explored more of the real prison and its history in the remake. The new Brookhaven director. The original was pretty much an enigma. The new director has some more focus. He's also a pretty obsessed man, like the warden. Um, does he? I don't. I don't remember if he has a moment similar to the Brookhaven director's note at the letter in a wrench. That's a very memorable moment from the original game, and I don't really remember the remake having one for him, even though he's more developed over notes compared to the original. I think I don't think I can put him in A tier. I could use a refresher on that subplot, the remake, and see if he actually gets a counterpart to that note. And if so, then I would definitely put him in up in A tier. Though I don't think it's as compelling as the original. And that's it for Silent Hill 2 remake. Uh, we're gonna move into a lesser entry uh, bet- between this and Silent Hill 3. Um, this can be quick. We can do the ARG characters from the what was the name of the ARG? It was Red Reaper, right? Red Reaper, and it was in the Historical Society's website that some people entered it and thought that it was just promotional in-universe material, but it actually had an entire storyline regarding a Walter Sullivan copycat and the suspicious death of one of the employees of the Historical Society. And I really like ARGs. I hadn't played one in a while, and it was very satisfying. So let's start with Felix Crane. This was kind of the false protagonist. He was the one of the employees of the Historical Society who died as of recent. He was the latest victim of the Walter Sullivan copycat. And he seemed like a very nice guy to be around. Overall, he was a very. The characters in the ERG seemed like very normal people. And Felix, he was just doing his job. May have stumbled into incriminating evidence for who the killer was. Eh, I'm not sure now. When I made this tier list, the ARG was a lot more relevant than it is right now. so many of the details are probably forgotten. But from what I remember, Felix was overall a good person, and uncovering what happened to him was very fun. So I think he deserves at least B tier because he kicked off the plot and it kept me interested. So props to him for dying. Next up is Ruby. Ruby Sinclair. She was the actual protagonist of the ARG. I don't remember what she was doing in what her role was in the historical society, but she kind of started digging into what happened to Felix, and that got her targeted by the Walter copycat. She also seems like a very nice person. Felix was in love with her, and I can see why. The character seems very nice, like just a really, at least a very good friend to have. I think I'm gonna put her alongside Felix here. They were both nice people who didn't deserve the situation they were put in, and at least they moved on. Here is William Slayer, also the Walter Sullivan copycat killer. He became pretty much the director of the Historical Society out of devotion for Walter. He's killed plenty of people, uh, killed Felix, and was going to kill Ruby as well. So that he was pretty irredeemable. I don't think he was supposed to be any anything complex. Just just a villain for the ARG. I think the ARG did well in setting him up, uh, having you realize little by little that he is the killer. He's not a complex character, but in terms of how the narrative is presented, I think he should very appropriately be alongside the two people that he wanted to kill. Next up are the lesser ARG characters. These ones have presence, but not so much. This is Ethan Ninomiya. Um, I don't really remember what he did, but one thing I remember is that in some of the hidden pages in his profile, he was kind of an asshole. Um, he's kind of forgettable, but not that forgettable. And also, TRG needed some red herrings as well, and some people to fill up the world building. I think he can be in D tier because at least him being a bit of an asshole stood out to me. Sarah Hendricks. I wish I could forget. I mean, oh no. I mean, I wish I could remember a bit more about her, but I really don't. If I remember correctly, she was kind of trying to. She was kind of weird about the artifacts, but I don't think she really got much characterization. Just that she was a bit odd. But overall, she just seemed as normal as everyone else. And sadly, that means that she wasn't very memorable to me. Same goes for Mabel Grant. Um, I think she actually goes in Don't Care because I genuinely can't remember a single plot point in the ARG that involves Mabel Grant. I remember a bit of some messages from her, but I don't remember her having any input in the plot whatsoever. So she goes in Don't Care because I mean I would like to care because of them seem like regular people except for this asshole. But yeah, sadly I don't remember David's last name. I think he was not much of an asshole, but he was a bit competitive. I remember him being involved in some of the hidden pages, but I don't remember many arcs that much information that talks about him. So he's going in E tier. Okay, that's another entry done. Let's see. If I do Among the Damned, which is just 4 characters, then 3 painted black. I think we can squeeze in another lesser entry before moving on. After all, we're at the peak of Silent Hill here, so we can afford it. Let's do Among the Damned. This comic is about a military survivor going to Silent Hill to commit suicide after an ambush pretty much killed all of his uh, fellow soldiers. Oh no, what's your name? Aaron? I think it's Aaron. I know Among the Damned involves an Aaron and a Jason, but I always forget which is which. Let's call him Aaron. Um, this is kind of like what Homecoming could have been if it focused on the soldier aspect. Uh, I don't really see the despair in him. That's kind of messed up to say, but he doesn't really convey it to me. So I can't put him somewhat high up. Also, Among the Damned is kind of difficult to follow. It's weird. He gets into town, um, he puts off, he postpones his suicide to help a woman he finds. Um, but there is a character there. It's just characterized weirdly. He might go in C tier alongside, Troy from Dying Inside. I don't really think he can go any higher than that. I mean, C tier for a comic character is already rare to find. And speaking of Among the Damned, here is Dahlia. No relation to Dahlia Gillespie. Dahlia is a singer, and I don't really remember why she is in the town. The comic also kind of switches between her being a monster all along and her being real, and it's very confusing to follow. I'd say that makes her more interest. That should make her more interesting, but the comic kind of fumbles that. It doesn't really give me enough time with her to really care. Um, I'm gonna put her in D tier. Her concept should be interesting, but overall, she just comes across as a way too disjointed Maria, and it could have been much better. Next up is, well, Jason, I guess. If the other guy was Aaron, then this is Jason. I can't for the life of me remember if he is supposed to be Aaron's brother or just his best friend in the military. He presumably died in an ambush that he set up, but now he's redeeming himself by saving Aaron. Um, Among the Damned is so difficult to follow, but I don't think I care enough about the weird narrative of the comic to put Jason any higher. I find him less interesting than Dahlia, at least. Finally, this one stands in for all of the survivors in the strange shelter that Aaron and Dahlia find. They seem like nice people, but also makes me wonder what the hell are they doing there? It's like the church from the 2006 movie, but it's not clear. It seems like any other building. Um, they're not much of a character. None of them really has any individual presence. I think they're going in E tier. No, 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 no. I straight up don't care about any of you. Yeah, at least Jason has some impact on the plot. The shelter survivors are kind of just there to pad out the runtime of the comic for Aaron and Talia to spend the night. And that doesn't really mean much when the comic is already way too convoluted for having downtime like that. And with that, Among the Damned is finished. Next up is Painted Black, but before that, we're gonna move on to a major entry. So we're going on to Silent Hill 3. And first of all, I mean, you know it, I know it. Heather, of course, she says here. She's well acted, she's well written, uh, great recognizable character design. She's relatable. She has very good examination text. for interacting with the little things in the environment. So she is just an as a portrayal of a teenager. She really fucking nails the attitude. Uh, I I feel like there's a lot to say about Heather, but when it comes to putting her in S tier, you kinda don't have to say anything because uh, pretty much anything you say is already an S tier worthy. Douglas Cartland, a detective. He's a jaded, cynical man, lost his son, his wife left him, and yet he still cares about Heather and wants to help her. Should have realized that he was being used earlier than that, and he kinda causes Silent Hill 3 to happen, but he makes up for it. But also, he isn't very useful after getting Heather to Silent Hill, which she was going to do anyway. He means well, and I guess that matters more than how useful he actually is. He's also kind of a remake of Sybil, but slightly more useful and with more characterization. Uh, if the game explored more his past and how that affects his relation with Heather, I think he would be an S tier. So that's something to note for the future, all but confirmed remake of 3. Claudia Wolf. Oh, she's a very misunderstood villain. She's definitely an S tier, that's for sure. Uh, Her motivation starts from not wanting to be like her father, which puts her at contrast with Heather, who is repeating the actions of her father. Claudia was abused. She really wants there to be happiness in the world, but she can't find any in her own life. She thinks there is no salvation in this life, unlike Heather, who has already found happiness. But also, I kind of feel like Heather slash Alessa can't really understand Claudia anymore because Heather slash Alessa got to experience happiness because of the soul split, and Claudia does not have that quote unquote benefit. She didn't have an escape. She grew up in the same misery that Alessa was born in at first. So I think the dynamic between the two of them is a lot more interesting than I've seen people discuss. I mean, because it's not that Alessa is privileged, she suffered, but she did find eventually a way out that wasn't death. And that's a way out that Claudia never had the opportunity to find. I think that's a great angle for studying the two of them. and Claudia really didn't deserve becoming the villain that she eventually did become. Moving on, Vincent, last name unknown because it was added in the novelization, which is not strictly canon, but for all intents and purposes, let's just say he's Vincent Smith, like the novelization claims. I like calling him just Father Vincent. I think it fits him. So he pretty much reformed the cult with his donations. Um, After all, the the events of Silent Hill 4's backstory had already happened at this point, so he pretty much rebuilt the church from nothing. The leaders of all three sects were dead. So he's a pretty smart man. He he does seem to be genuinely a believer, but he's not as fundamentalist as everyone else. He is pretty corrupt. Um, I like to think that the cassette tape we hear in the church, that he was keeping it for blackmailing the fellow acolyte, since she's recorded speaking ill of Claudia. Um, in game, though, he's so difficult because when I was younger, I couldn't understand why Heather didn't trust him. Like, he was the only guy besides Douglas who seemed to be willing to help out and also had insider knowledge of the cult. And I didn't understand why Heather was so scared of him. I mean, now I'm older. And yeah, girl, same. I would be scared of him. And I really like that he's one of the only allies, quote unquote, allies in the game. And yet, neither the player nor Heather fully trust him. Absolutely, S tier. Altiel, an angel, the attendant of God. He's definitely an S tier. I mean, he's an angel. Even if that's not his true form, or we don't really meet the, uh, we don't really see an actual angel, and this is just a manifestation. I think as a concept, he's very fucking cool. He has control over the other world. He's kind of escorting Heather, though he kinda does a poor job at that, and has canonically killed more human people than Pyramid Head, which I find wild. He killed Lisa and her boyfriend, which might be a point down for killing such a beloved character. But I mean, getting killed by an angel, that's a cool way to die. So yeah, Baltiel is tier. He's great. I kind of like him more than Pyramid Head, especially in design. I really like the smaller details on Baltiel. like the seal of Metatron tattooed on his shoulders, or how he seems to have a nozzle going from the side of his head into where his mouth could be, but he doesn't have a mouth there. His mouth is on the other side of his head at the top, and that's a really cool design. The missionary, uh, the possibly transfigured cultist that killed Harry. First of all, very cool design. I really like the blades, the contraptions he uses. Also, a lot of people don't see it, but you can actually see the human face under the bag if you look at it closely. He doesn't have much in terms of character, but in terms of design and how his battle plays with stealth a little, it has a pretty fucking huge impact on the plot. I'm putting him in A tier. This guy, Stanley Coleman, Heather's stalker. Like Vincent, when I was younger, I didn't understand why Heather didn't want someone's help in the hospital, especially when Stanley seemed to be so willing to help. I was very naive. Stanley, kind of weirdly misogynistic, very creepy, very obsessed, but he's so fucking good at making players feel uneasy. There's so many of his notes that you might not even see in your first playthrough because of the order that you do things in. If you don't read no wait, if you don't read one of these notes, then the others don't spawn. Uh, I can't put a, put him on S tier, but he can be in A tier because he's such a haunting presence throughout the hospital level. He has such a huge impact not on the plot like other characters, but on the player themselves. And that's a great thing to achieve when you're a completely off-screen character. Leonard Wolf. We don't know much about him, and what we do know is horrible. He was a very abusive father, a strong fundamentalist, very elitist. He thinks only chosen ones will reach heaven. He was apparently so violent that he would uh, hurt other patients in the hospital just out of religious disagreements. The game does build his threat throughout the level, and you can see the effects of what he did in Claudia. Even though he still says that he wasn't going to kill her, he still he's kind of another main reason why Silent Hill 3 happens. If he hadn't raised Claudia the way he did, none of it would happen. He's going in A tier because he lacks complexity or a larger understanding of him besides those big negative qualities. But those big negative qualities are very, very strong. His boss fight sucks though, but I'm not going to knock him down a point for that. Memory of Alessa, also known as Alessa's obsession. This is the part of Alessa that has been clinging to a painful place in Silent Hill for 17 years, wanting nothing but to kill herself. And she wants to stop Heather from going into the church because she thinks that is only going to unleash more pain than if they just kill each other. A very climactic fight, very strong environment, very strong motives. If you look at her legs closely, you can see that she has the straps of the gurney burned into her skin. And that's what messed up and metal as fuck. Is she is there for everything? I mean, she has the big symbolism. She has a cool design. She has her own motivation and a good fight. I think she deserves to be in S tier. Now moving on to minor Silent Hill 3 characters, we have the new Brookhaven director. So obviously, if the Silent Hill 2 director was even real, this one seems like a completely different person. So I made him a different entry. And what we know of this director continues the theme of Brookhaven in this game, being about sexist violence. We know that he is abusive towards his nurses, that he locks them in the isolation wards. He presumably wrote the fucked up poem that you read in hard mode for the keypad. So we know that this is a messed up guy. We don't really know much about him otherwise, I mean, outside of it. But he doesn't have as much of a presence as Stanley. I would put him in B tier, but I think he continues to drive home the point of Brookhaven in Silent Hill 3. Seeing a person in a position of power so openly violent about women definitely adds to the atmosphere that the hospital is trying to create. So the only reason I'm not putting him in A tier with Stanley is just because Stanley's presence is so overwhelming. The new director just doesn't match up to it. But when they're added as a whole, uh, that that pretty much justifies the entire reason for going through the entire level. I think Brookhaven in 3 would be very unremarkable if not for the running team that is shared between Stanley and the new director. And also the happy birthday color. He's also theoretically an ally. He leaves you ammunition and supplies depending on if you which one do you use the most in during the game. But he's technically an ally, but he's also very creepy. He also kind of doesn't see her as herself. He only sees her as Alessa or Cheryl, or all of them. Also, may or may not be real. Uh, it's a very strong scene. It's darkly comedic. I don't think. Hmm, no, maybe. I think it does have similar impact to the Brookhaven director's notes. I'm gonna put him in B tier. And finally, no, not finally, almost. For Silent Hill 3, you have the woman in the cassette that you find in the church. Um, just a regular cultist. We know what they are like. We know they are very repentant, pious. They they really want a better world, but they don't realize that they're not the real organization for that. She doesn't have much of an impact besides showing that uh, the organization has pretty much lied to them about what happened in Silent Hill 1. So she's not very important, but I think she's a nice piece of world building that the franchise really needed. Just how the average person in the cult is like. I'm gonna put her in CRT. Uh, I'm gonna put her in C tier. I'm gonna be nice. And I used the image of the alien at the end of 3. Uh, I mean, this guy is pretty chill. He lives now with Harry and James. I like to imagine that he's kind of a cool uncle to Heather. Uh, Probably helped destroy Silent Hill in the revenge ending. And also, aliens are pretty chill in in the endings, except in the endings themselves. They zap Harry and James, but then they seem to be just chilling fine. So maybe they're just a little rough around the edges. Maybe they're a little shy meeting them, but they seem like cool people. Uh, quote unquote people. S tier. Alright, to intercut something between major entries, I'm gonna tackle a lesser entry. Painted Black, uh, another of the Silent Hill comics. This one follows a kind of poor painter. I'm using his image from Dead Alive, but this is Ike in general. Ike Isaacs. He's a very selfish man. He willingly moves to Silent Hill to get inspiration from the monsters in town, and then gets his privacy invaded by some cheerleaders. Uh, the comic gets very weird at some point, but after that, he continues to live in Silent Hill as a badass hunter, and he's kind of annoying at first. I don't really care much for him in Painted Black. but I'm also including his characterization in Dead Alive, and he's better as time goes on. Uh, he is not as cool as Lauren, uh, but I think he can be in B tier, just low B tier, nowhere near, Sybil and the others. Next, I don't remember. Oh no, I remember. Because for some reason they named this character Cheryl, which has nothing to do with the Cheryl we know. This Cheryl is a cheerleader. Um, her cheerleader team crashed their bus in Silent Hill. I think they crashed or it broke down. But either way, they started living there. They invade Ike's place. And also, she weirdly turns out to be also a survivalist expert. Um, the whole cheerleader part of Painted Black is very weird. She's she's also kind of implied to not be real, but that plot point goes nowhere. I'm gonna put her in D tier alongside Dahlia from Among the Damned. It just doesn't end up making much sense, you know. And she's also not very entertaining to watch or look at since this is a comic. The rest is the rest of the cheerleader team. They're so weird. They're in Silent Hill. They know there are monsters all around, but they start invading Ike's place and decorating them. They start singing and dancing and partying in it. And then they kind of become an army when two of them get kidnapped by monsters. It's 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 very weird. Um, because they're kind of a collective and not very interesting. I'm just gonna put them below Cheryl in E tier. I can't put them in don't care about them because they're so fucking weird that I have to care. And finally, for Painted Black, this guy. I don't even remember his name. So he's going in don't care about him. This is Ike's friend. He was sharing his apartment with him at the start of Painted Black. But and then he gets sick of Ike just kind of doing nothing to justify his stay at the apartment, not being very thankful. So he kicks Ike out, and that starts Painted Black. So I mean, he's just too normal, does almost nothing without much to learn about him. Don't care about you. I'm sure he has a name, but I can't be bothered to remember it. And for the second, uh, lesser entry, uh, short message. Why not? Let's do short message next. There's only a few 8 entries here. Anita Plannert. She has suffered a lot in life. that clearly messed up her development. Uh, Verbally, domestically abused by her mother. Had to see her little brother die because of her mother. No wonder she's messed up by now. She's very jealous. She really struggles with self-worth. I don't really think she's as terrible as some people think she is. She's just a teen that got dealt a terrible hand too early in life and clearly did not get to grow up well because of it. And unlike Alessa, who pretty much dealt with very similar things, uh, Anita was just stuck in a very real world, uh, pretty much nothing to turn to. I'm putting her in A tier because ultimately I don't think she's as compelling as the others, but I do think she's better at being a complex character than it looks like at first. Maya Ako Hindenburg. I think she's an S tier character. I'm gonna say it outright. Maya, somewhat implied to be sapphic or lesbian, but she cares a lot about people, women like her, teens that are struggling, but she's haunted by their generational trauma of how quickly the town turned on her grandmother and her family. She's perpetually worried that her world will turn on her, that when she's no longer beneficial to her art, kind of a more interesting Ike in that regard, and heavily implied that what does her in is being left by her boyfriend while being pregnant, and that's a very hormonal moment that's going to mess someone up who already deals with depression and mental struggles. I do think she was like Anita. She was being dealt a very bad hand at life in a very realistic environment where there's nothing to turn to. Amelie, I think she is easily the least interesting of the main three characters of short message. And so she's going in B, but she has something of her own. She is trying to be normal. We know she has struggles in her home life with a potentially incestuous, abusive brother. Um, and yet, we pretty much only see her with a smile. And I think it's pretty telling how these three main characters are all struggling on something, but they show it in different ways. Anita is very overt about it. Maya is overt about it, but paints it with a it kind of paints over it with her art to show it, but in a more discreet way, while Amelie just hides it altogether. I think that's that's about one of the most interesting things about how short message handles its characters. Krista Plannert, Anita's mom. She's acted weirdly. She's horrible, but she wasn't always horrible. She was presumed to be a decent mother until depression started getting her. It is not explored very well, though. It's only in a few notes in her own diary. Um, I think, yeah, she's a C tier. Could be explored better. Um, and probably acted better, but that's kind of outside the realm now. Now some unseen short message characters. Amelie's brother, the presumably incestuous, abusive guy. We don't know much about him besides that he is abusive and incestuous. Um, it feels mm, he doesn't have much of an impact on the plot because Amelie hides it so well, but it does set the tone in the loop this arc is introduced. I'm gonna put him in C tier. Oh, I'm gonna put him in C tier because of that. He might not be much of a character, but he does work in the context of that loop. Anita's brother, he was way too young when Krista killed him by um, I think she locked him in the closet and he died of hunger, and then she tried to hide his body in the fridge, and it was very messed up. He was an innocent child. I think it's a bit here. Obviously not very complex, but his death kind of has a huge impact on Anita's mental health. So I can't put him too low. The Witch of Kittenstad. I think this is a very interesting aspect because instead, well, everything else is kind of uh, some familiar trauma within Maya, Anita, and Amelie. The Witch of Kittenstad, her demise comes from a social point. She was a very successful Japanese woman who I think she did some very good predictions to help the German market at the time to develop the city. But then business started failing and people blamed her for it because of being a foreigner. So it's unclear if she killed herself. She was already sick by the time that happened. It's not clear if she killed herself or if uh, some townspeople killed her. But either way, it's presumed that her death, uh, the strong emotions attached to the place, are what created the villa in short message. I think it's very interesting to explore an angle like that. It's not the kind of witch hunt that we saw in the movie is an entirely different type of a witch hunt. And I really want to see something like that explored when we're talking about Silent Hill moving to another city. How does the society of that place integrate with that? What kind of emotions get attached to each place because of that? And finally, for short message, Krista's lover, we don't know much about him. We know that he was kind of apprehensive about Krista having kids, but he didn't seem like a bad guy from what she described him as. Uh, I think it did because while his rejection uh, causes Krista to eventually lose it, we don't know much about him. I mean, we presume that he must have been a nice guy, but unfortunately, Krista didn't get to know him more. So who knows? Oh, next up is Silent Hill 4, and there are so many characters for that. I'm kind of considering uh, dropping the stream for today. How long have I been streaming for? I don't I don't know. I could see how long I had been streaming for yesterday. I don't remember where I heard that. But I could have around this time. It is definitely more than an hour. So I think I'd be cutting this stream here. Okay. It seems everything is fine. Reverb. Anyways, I think we're cutting it here. So next stream, I don't know when. Might be tomorrow, might not be. I'll be tackling Silent Hill 4, which has many entries. Includes all of the residents of South Asheville Heights. It also has Walter's victims. Then, what could I do after that? I could do The Grinning Man and Dead Alive. There are one, two, five entries each. It wouldn't be taking too long. Um, besides Silent Hill 4, hmm. I'm thinking, when the hell am I going to do Ascension? Because there's so many characters. And I kind of remember a good amount of them. So I actually have things to say about them. We have Hunger, which is kind of has a good amount of characters here. Sinner's Reward, Also, we have to count the orphan games, other spin-offs. Hmm. So next stream, Silent Hill 4, The Grinning Man, Dead Alive, and maybe no, I think we can do Origins after that. So that's all right. I'll be leaving now. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for watching. If you're watching the VOD, I'll be seeing you next video.